This is our 73rd sequel. Bishop Tucker visits Buddu on a pastoral visit and then goes on to Toro yet again on a pastoral visit, and we shall also go into the official state visit of Churchill. Welcome. I'm Christopher Amos Chikomeko Ntambi, the author of these sequels. We are celebrating the Church of Uganda at 150 years. We celebrate the church history and we also celebrate the state. In July 1907, Bishop Tucker made his pastoral visit to Buddu, which is recorded in his book. There was a local sub-county chief called Thomas Semukasaki Joma, who invited the Church Missionary Society on Kako Hill by donating 200 acres of land to them. Therefore, Bishop Tucker approved plans for the shifting of the Church Missionary Society station from Kianja to Kako Hill. The bishop then went on to Kochi, and then after Kochi to Ankole, where Premier Noah Mbaguta welcomed his party. Unfortunately, the Omugabe was on an official visit to Buganda, and therefore he missed the bishop. Then on the 1st of August, 1907, Bishop Tucker says that he then visited Toro, and that on that particular occasion, he received the warmest ever welcome anywhere ever. So this welcome went beyond the kind of welcome he had ever received even in Buganda. 2,000 people, led by the Omukama himself, lined the streets, apparently in appreciation for the Church Missionary Society translation of the entire Old Testament into Lunyolo Lutoro, work that had been done by Dr. Maddox and others. There was also a vibrant Church Missionary Society mission with a full hospital run by Dr. Bond. Other missioners in Toro included Miss Pike and Miss B. Allen. So the welcome he received on the 1st of August 1907 is recorded in his book as the warmest he had ever received anywhere. On the 4th of August, still in Toro, 1907, Andrea Sere and Yosia Kamuhigi were set apart as deacons by Bishop Tucker. In Toro, he also confirmed 401 candidates. Hope you hear the numbers. Yeah. The year is 1907, and here is a Muzungu bishop confirming 400 candidates. Now, the bishop continued with his pastoral visit to Kabalole, to Butiti, to Bugoma, and then he even crossed over to Bunyoro, where he visited Hoima, where he arrived on the 16th of August 1907. It was not until the 31st of August 1907 that Bishop Tucker returned to Namirembe. And that ended Bishop Tucker's recorded pastoral visits anywhere in the Diocese of Uganda. It was not the end of them, but the recorded one ended with that. That is because he ended his book. Volume 2 ended there. So, yes, he made other pastoral visits later, but they are not recorded. We won't have the benefit of these minute details anymore. And therefore, let's move on to the arrival of the British Under Secretary for Colonies, Churchill. Churchill was the son of Lord Randolph Churchill, and his mother was Lady Jeremy of Oxfordshire. Churchill, on arrival in Uganda, was 32 years old, and in July of 1907, before his arrival, the Secretary of State for Colonies, Lord Elgin, requested him formally to visit East Africa during the British parliamentary recess. He was to be accompanied by his uncle, Colonel Gordon Wilson, and his private secretary, Mr. Edward Marsh. He was also to be accompanied by his servant, George Scrivings. Now, in Kenya, where the visit began, they went shooting and hunting, and don't forget that the railway was available, so they used to travel by railway all the way to Port Florence. And then they used the steamer to Entebbe, where they arrived on the 18th of November, 1907. So Churchill, the Under-Secretary of State for Colonies of Great Britain, arrived in Uganda or at Entebbe on the 18th of November, 1907. At Entebbe, which was also known as Port Alice, Churchill was received and he was driven in Governor Hesketh Bell's new car to Government House, all the way in Nakasero, Oka Impala. On the 20th of November 1907, many days later, actually not many days, I think those were two days later, he was conferred on the title of governor to Hesketh Bell. Before then, all the previous were special commissioners. From then on, all his predecessors would carry the same title. The principal judge, Ennis, administered the oath of office as Churchill looked on. Churchill, at the ceremony, announced that he had come to agree with the explorer Henry Stanley that Uganda was the pearl of Africa. Instead, the world has attributed that saying to Churchill himself, yet he was quoting Stanley. The error has never been corrected, even as we celebrate 150 years of our church today. May I repeat? Fine, let me repeat for you. At the swearing-in ceremony, Churchill gave a speech. The swearing-in ceremony of Hesketh Bell, transiting from a special commissioner to a governor for the very first time. And from then on, all his successors were to be called governors. So at that ceremony, Churchill spoke, and he said that he had come to agree with explorer Henry Stanley that Uganda was the pearl of Africa. Now, instead, the world has attributed those words to Churchill himself, yet he was quoting Stanley. The error has never been corrected, even as we celebrate 150 years of our native church. Fine, the following day, the 21st of November 1907, Churchill visited the church missionary stations at Namirembe, and he also visited the White Fathers at Lubaga, and he also visited the Mill Hill missionaries at Insambia. He also visited Uganda Company, and then he went to the Mengo Palace to see the Kabaka designate, who was 11 years old. Present were the three regents, Apollo Kagwa, Stanlas Mugwanya, and Zakaria Kizito Kisingiri. On the 22nd of November, Churchill ended his visit, and he took the route through Munyonyo Port, heading by steamer to Jinja. In Jinja, he saw the Ripon Falls on the Nile. And it's important for us to hear what he had to say. Hesketh Bell said that the creation of the state of Israel out of Uganda had to fail because, despite the fact that explorer Henry Morton had described Uganda as the pearl, the Jews preferred their own biblical Garden of Eden. And they had come to find out that the reason they had thought of Uganda was that the biblical Garden of Eden was not actually in the Middle East, but in Uganda. If you read about the four rivers in the Bible, River Pishon, River Gihon, the Tigris, and the Euphrates. So as he was being shown around the source of the Nile, Churchill was kind of trying to say that, you see, all these looked like the biblical Eden that was being written about in the Bible. He, however, admitted that Gihon was definitely not the Nile, because despite the fact that it flowed all the way to Egypt, that was Cush land. And according to the scriptures, Cush was not the promised land. And therefore, the creation of the state of Israel had to be biblical. And therefore, the Jews had decided that Uganda was not qualified for the state of Israel. So, for the first time, Ugandans got, or Apollo Kagwan, his group got an explanation. And all this explanation he gives on the 22nd of November 1907 at the source of River Nile in Jinja. He then began to sail upstream to the Mankshan Falls and further on the White Nile to southern Equatoria to Khartoum, where his beloved servant George Scriving was taken ill and he unfortunately died. Churchill continued upstream to Cairo and back to England. On reaching England in his good time, he wrote a book about his journey, which book is called My African Journey. He described Uganda as, from end to end, a beautiful garden. He never said, I want to say it again, that Uganda was the pearl of Africa. That was a quotation of Henry Stanley, the owner of the quote. And I know when I insist on that, I will spoil your day. Churchill wrote a second edition of his book, but there was nothing new there apart from the fact that there were less photos compared to his first book. Churchill's visit is very historical, but I'm very surprised that Ugandan historians have a problem with the dates. Why? Despite this being a very historical visit, I have seen textbooks written by some Ugandan university professors who claim that it was made in 1912. I will not mention names, neither will I mention the books, because this is shameful. I really wonder what is wrong with Ugandan researchers, because now this cannot be a typing error. It is just a professor who refused to do his personal research. Have they apologized? No. No, they haven't. Anyway, let me not belabor so much on that. Let's simply celebrate our history and let the university professors not be a source of us getting out of what we intercessors call the Spirit. The Spirit of the Lord is on us. And so, may the good Lord bless us all. Amen.